So my name's Bella, I come from the trade desk and I look after the data team there. So a little different to some of the guys on the stage, which is why they are going to be controlling our narrative today. But do you guys someone want to take over?
I'll go first. Hi guys, I'm Ryan Lamont and I am the Senior Development Manager at Acast. Yay, Acast.
I'm Sarah Adams. I'm a producer. I'm on the Inspired Unemployed, but I also do Two Broke Chicks and Big Small Talk as well.
And my name's Sam. I'm the co-founder of the Daily Aus, which is Australia's largest youth news network. So we've got our flagship daily podcast, Daily Aus, hosted still after, I think, 1,200 episodes by Zara and I, even though we're waning a bit. But yeah, lovely to be here.
Hello. And like I said, better intros than I could have done. I would have definitely messed up your last name, Sam. Koslowski.
Very ethnic.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
That's the problem with our generation.
Okie dokie. Well, let's start with a bang, dust off some nerves. I know I'm nervous, so apologies if I talk really fast. But do we think, yes or no, is podcasting dead, done, kaput?
Yes, and I've brought my resume with me today to pass around. No, I think podcasting is absolutely thriving, which we'll be very happy about. And then being at Acast, which is a global company, you kind of get that global view of what's going on, because we know Australia's a little bit behind the rest of the world. And we can see that it's all going well overseas, so that's going to trickle down here. So I think we're pretty safe for years to come.
Yeah, hopefully not. No, I don't think so. I think if anything, you feel like you've hit what else could you possibly make? Like, what else is there to make in a podcast? It feels like such a saturated market sometimes. And then there is always an angle, and there is always new voices coming through and new spins on it. And you're seeing still the numbers in 18-year-olds and younger that are engaging in it. And I'm sure we'll get into the many reasons why, but yes.
And I definitely think, no, it's thriving, it's doing really well. What I do think that we as an industry are getting a little complacent at is the innovation and the role that innovation is playing in podcasting. I mean, so much has changed with short form video in the last couple of years. Nothing has really changed in audio delivery. I mean, we've got two major players in Spotify and Apple. That's how most people, especially in our generation, receive their podcasts. We haven't quite worked out show notes. We don't really know how to get people to click out of an audio app and into something we want them to do. There's a couple of really interesting delivery patterns there. I think something really interesting to look at is Africa, for example, where they have much more of a reliance on instant messaging apps for delivery of not only podcasts, but news, newsletters, entertainment, everything, blogs, because it's easier for data. So there's interesting patterns around the world, and I think we're a bit behind.
So that was the longest yes or no.
Thank you.
But thank you. All right, so whilst we're sort of getting started then and we're feeling chatty, a question for everyone on the panel. A recent study a little while now from Spotify revealed that sort of for Gen Z and millennials, about 56% responded that audio was an escape from just far too much visual stimulation. We know the doom scrolling, we know all that kind of content in our face at all times. And also from a media investment point of view, as the IAB have just announced in their results for 2023 media investment, we're seeing an increase in spend now. We're seeing 21% in overall audio investment, and then again 22% with just podcasting. So the question to you guys is, what is this like one key magical source element that is just so unique to audio content, and then also audio advertising, that's driving this generation's obsession and passion with podcasting? Sam, since you're looking at me, you're on.
Well, I think that, every podcast is different. And, when I want to switch off and relax and not think about how scary the world is, I listen to the Inspired Unemployed to escape. But what we find with Daily Aus listeners is that they're listening to us because they're actually trying to zone in on the best version of themselves for 10 minutes a day because they're headed for a date and they don't want to sound dumb and they just quickly want to listen. It's really like a thing, right? Is that we want to try and fit in with the people around us, and that we can help you do that in 10 minutes. And what I think audio does that's so special is it's the only place still that a Daily Aus follower, listener, reader has a relationship to Zara and I. And so we launched a book last year.
Yep.
And when we were signing books, everyone was saying, I love your podcast. But we've got, 5 or 6 times the audience on Instagram. We've got at least 3 times the audience on newsletter. Like, we've got much bigger audiences elsewhere. But they actually came to an event to meet us because of the podcast.
There you go. Sarah?
I think it's the same thing. I think it's the relationship you can build through a podcast that blows my mind every day. And having someone, think of like TikTok or Instagram. Yes, you are building community with those, and you do feel like you know people online. But to have someone in your ear for like 45 minutes and to like hold your attention on that and to feel like you're listening in on a conversation, which is kind of it, like whether it's a comedy podcast, you feel like you're listening into friends. If you're listening into a news podcast, you still feel like someone's teaching you something directly. And that feels so personal that I don't think there's other formats that can do that or achieve that in the same way.
Yeah, I agree on the coffee point though. I always feel like after I listen to a podcast, I feel like I've just caught up with a really good friend, or like you get the life updates really quickly. Ryan?
Yeah, I would say I think it's the environments that you can listen to podcasting as well. We know Gen Z love scrolling their Instagram, their TikTok, their Snapchat, but you can't do that while you're driving. It's illegal. But you can listen to a podcast, and you can listen to the podcast when you're at the gym, you're doing your grocery shopping. When you're in those non-visual scrolly kind of environments, the podcast is there to be your kind of company and your friend group. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so now some specific questions. So Sarah, hi.
Hi.
I am so jealous of your job. I feel like it would be so much more fun than mine. So relevancy though, and maintaining that really high standard of engaging content, like that is just the forever quest of any creator. I mean, like for a little while I dabbled in trying to be a mumfluencer. Don't do it, it's terrible. But for you guys with the Inspired Unemployed, and especially as the producer, like what is it? I mean, kind of covered a little bit, but what is it that makes your podcast just so engaging? Like the level of engagement you guys seeing is through the roof.
Yeah, we constantly shocked by how much people engage, and also by the fact that it's this 50-50 split between boys and girls, which is also really unheard of in podcasting as well. And I think as a producer, there was a few things we did. One was we segmented the podcast. We made it 4 segments, and we made each segment completely almost unrelated to the next. I don't know whether it's because when I looked at this, I was thinking of Gen Z and was thinking attention spans and keeping things interesting and keeping things moving along is always what I'm aiming to do. But it wasn't even that. It was more than that. It was trying to cover different types of topics in the podcast, and that was something that could be funny and really stupid, and then follow it with something that could be like a genuine discussion on mental health, and then break that and talk about something completely different that's like the relationship, where like how my date was last night, whatever it was. And I think the ability to do that, and the boys' ability to do that, especially with the Inspired, is they're so vulnerable in everything they talk about, and that's also really surprising to hear from 2 young guys as well. And they speak so well and so openly that I think that is refreshing. Hate to use the R word, but I think that's a big part of it, is they're just really vulnerable and knowing that we're catering to a wide audience, and so trying to find something for everyone in it.
I love that. That's so good. All right, Ryan, time to talk money. All right, so we know that the Z's, this is me trying to be not
cool.
Whatever I am. Yeah, thanks, cool. So we know the Z's like personalised experiences and content that aligns with their individual preferences. They're not scared to use an ad blocker either. So for someone from the trade desk who does ads, that's a little bit scary. But podcasting has created this really unique scenario where there's this high tolerance for ads. Like there's people selling in your ear. We're seeing we're seeing really high performance rates around listen through rates of 90%. And with the IAB recently in their State of the Nation report, we're seeing that the recorded spot or the host read ad is still remaining this preferred format. So what is it about these formats that prove just so effective in connecting with our Z listeners?
The Z's. I think it's the fact that at Acast what we do is it's all dynamically inserted, so it's always local, relevant, and timely for you, no matter where you're listening worldwide. So if you're listening to like your favorite Aussie podcast, you're going to get that nice Coles ad although controversial at the moment, but other relevant ads as well. And if you're listening to like a UK podcast, like My Dad Wrote a Porno, for example, if you hear a host for a sponsorship, that's meant for you. And they'll usually celebrate that because they're an English podcast. They're like, "G'day, guys, we're here to talk about BetterHelp today." And they'll kind of give that acknowledgement that this is intended for Australia. And it's like that second layer of like engagement where it's like when we hear Australia in a Hollywood movie and we're like, "Oh, that's us." When Taylor Swift's like, "Hello, Sydney," it's like she sees us. So it's that kind of element in the host for a sponsorship where you have that parasocial relationship. So when they kind of shout you out as Australia or other kind of groups, like you have that further connection there. So like we were saying before, like it is this friend group. Like if a friend group is like, "Oh, I went to McDonald's, had this great new burger," you're going to try that burger. So it works very well.
Sam, I'm going to throw it to you randomly. You're not ready for the question, but as someone who has a podcast and obviously news, what's your thought on sort of what Ryan just said, like in terms of the ad slots that you have, or if you're looking to in the future kind of introduce more ad slots for you with news and this audience? How would you approach it?
Well, I think the most important thing is to actually expand the scope beyond audio. And so understand that young media consumers aren't listening to podcasts on their way into work, listening to podcasts while they're at work, and then listening to podcasts when they go home. They're actually listening to podcasts at the beginning of the day, then they're flicking onto socials and they're looking at socials. They might read a newsletter in the middle of the day, then they might watch a YouTube video. And so the ability for brands like the Daily Aus, for example, but there's other brands out there that do it. I mean, traditional media are the best at it. To offer multi-platform approaches is the best way to capture younger audiences. But actually get those platforms to talk to each other. I hate when I can hear opportunities from other publishers and I can see that they're taking a multi-platform approach, but they're not joining the dots. They're not saying, jump onto Instagram and fill out our poll because we're partnering with this bank today and we want to know whether you're feeling under stress financially. And that is the opportunity, I think, to actually move people around, deepen the engagement, and yet give them that, like, as we were saying, like a personal kind of connection to their day. I think there's a lot of mystery around Gen Z when there doesn't need to be. We're not aliens. We're just...
But you are.
We're not. I'll get there one day.
I do like the mystique around it. Like all of a sudden you guys are like the game changers. And you are changing things. But I agree. You're just people. I can prove it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, whilst we have you then...
that should be our generation's motto. We're just people. I can prove it.
We're not scary.
We're breaking all the stereotypes right now. All right, so, Sam, there's definitely a healthy level of skepticism across the sort of Gen Zs, and especially in regard to mainstream news outlets. And I really appreciate this as well, that you guys value true journalistic integrity just so much, and you're constantly striving for more information, which sometimes can lead that social media doom scroll, assisted news outlet as a source, which obviously I don't think is a good idea. It could be controversial to say that, but there's always that polarizing point. The algorithm starts to determine what you're seeing, what you're reading, right? So for you, in terms of how you're presenting your information, what is it about? And I guess we kind of keep covering on this, so if you want to just scrap the question, it's fine. But what is it about how you guys are presenting your news and information, the podcast, the book, that is driving the trust, I guess, with this generation?
Yeah, well, the first thing to say is, absolutely no offense to anybody who does work for the two majors, and like when we have these conversations about concentration in the media market, I think it's just important to look at the numbers. We are the most concentrated English-speaking media market in the world, and it's no surprise then that we are having the lowest trust levels amongst under 30s of English-speaking countries in the world, and that's the Nielsen Digital Media Report pretty much every year for the last 4 years now. And so hopefully with the Daily Aus, what we're doing is simply just providing an alternative and keeping the bastards honest. Again, no offense intended at all. But if it just means that traditional players are actually focusing on a younger audience, if it means that advertisers, agencies are focusing on a younger audience because we turn up, then that's something, hopefully, that is a really good value add to society as a whole. I think there's a couple of things that we really try and do as the Daily Aus that separate ourselves from the main players, and our audience has told us is making the real difference. It includes things like being really proud when we apologise for something, and not having these kind of convoluted apology statements where we say that we didn't mean to do something, but clearly we did. And just being, we fucked it. And this is why, and we're sorry, and we're keeping on getting better, and this is how we need your help in order to do that. It's things like ensuring that we're explaining terms to make sure that no one's alienated and feeling like they're not having assumed knowledge. I mean, the CPI came out today. What's the CPI? I doubt that many of you would be able to answer what the CPI is, let alone people who are fresh from high school, in university, definitely not studying economics. But they shouldn't feel isolated from understanding that it's the cost of a basket of goods compared to this time last year, and like actually understanding that without feeling like an idiot. So there's lots of ways that we're trying to change the game up. The key barrier for us is money. Yeah. Like why would you give a brief to the Daily Aus when you can give a brief to a major player who can offer you 30 million impressions and give you everyone from an 18-year-old to a 65-year-old on AM radio? So what we have to constantly battle with is why. And we haven't had, we haven't had an easy road to monetization. So one of the first things we did was raise money. And one of the first people we raised money from was David Gingell, because we wanted the blessing of old school media. And for him to be a signal to the industry that, like, these kids are for real. Yeah. These kids are not fucking around. Like, they are here to stay. We are not going to get sold to traditional media. We are actually trying to change journalism in Australia.
I love that.
Thank you.
Go, fight the good fight, man.
I haven't slept in 7 years, but yes.
That's wonderful. Neither, and I'm a mum, so it's different reasoning. All right, so a question for everyone. I feel like Sam's got a lot of airtime, so we're going to spread it out a little bit. So, Sarah, you have a captive audience here. You've got brands, agencies, creatives, journalistic outlets. I can see B&T up there typing away. What is one piece of advice or guidance that you want to share with these guys about audio content and ads when they're creating for this Gen Z? Like, is there something in particular? You mentioned the four pieces of the format before, but is there more?
You know what? This may sound obvious, but I've learned apparently it's definitely not. I have been really lucky in my career so far that when tapping into Gen Z audiences, people have thought to ask me as a Gen Z what I would like to listen to or what I'm interested in. And I think the best thing you can do is speak to someone directly who you're like, maybe don't speak to a 45-year-old guy about this. Like, speak to someone that you are trying to target, because they are going to have the insights. And also then trust if you partner up with a podcast that has, for Big Small Talk, for example, I'm a host on that as well. And we're only just getting into using advertising for the first time. And we've been picking advertisements and brands that we know really align with us and stuff that we believe in. And they've picked us because they feel they're the same. And so I think when you are already on that same page, the next step beyond that is to then trust the hosts or the producer with how best to work in that advert into your piece. Whether that is a host read or if you're going to bake in segments, trust them to know how to make it sound natural and how to make it not sound too aggressive. Because what, as a host and as a producer, you have in mind all the time is keeping your audience's trust and having that relationship with them, and that is what is the most important part. So just having that trust with the show to know how to speak to their audience the best is only going to do the best by you as well.
And young people know that we need to make money.
Yeah.
And they're cool with that.
They're not mad about us having ads. They're like, good for them. We know it's tough.
Value exchange, though, because you don't know sometimes. Like, you hear all these reports around ad blockers and deepening engagement in certain areas, but then not in others. And so that's good to hear. Okay, Ryan, sorry, I know I gave you some time.
I'm down here. I have
we
thoughts.
haven't forgotten you.
I agree. I see Gen Z being like, get that bird girl all the time. So they're very pro money, and I love that. I totally agree. I think you should really be trusting the creators that have built that loyal audience over the years and months that they've done that, and put that creative control in the creators' realm, which is great. So give them your key messages, give them your parameters, like no swearing, don't mention these people, and then give that creative control to them. I know that is very scary for advertisers to give that control to people. So at Acast, we have a really good system where we have a really brilliant sales team and brilliant creative team where they'll really walk advertisers and brands through that process, where we'll give you a nice script that's all scripted and detailed, like old school vibes. And we'll give that to the podcaster, they'll record that version, and then they'll do an ad-lib version, which is a bit more vibey, freelance, like whatever. And we give them both to the brand and the agency to have a look at, and they'll get that choice to pick between which one they want. And they generally go with the ad-libbed one, because that one's the natural, engaging, kind of vibey one. So we take on that journey in like little baby steps, and then next time you can just give a bit more control to them, and it's good. So yeah.
This feels like my 2.5-year-old trying to get him to eat. It's like you give him the broccoli and the carrot and then like something else, and I know what I want him to do, but like the choice, it seems like the same thing.
Acast is like, here comes the aeroplane, so it's great.
Very good. Okay, so I mean we're kind of doing well for time, I think. Yep. We only have one more question, but then to take time with answering it. Lots of words. Okay, so looking forward and to close us out today, where do we think podcasting and the power of audience to influence Gen Z is going to go? What is the next level? Where are we going? Ryan.
To the charts. I think if you look at the podcast charts, Gen Z creators and Gen Z focused audiences are really leading the way. So to give more words and time, has anyone here heard of Kat Clark? Can anyone raise your hand if you've heard of Kat Clark? Let the record show hundreds of hands just went up, hundreds. Kat Clark, she's one of the most influential TikTokers in Australia, so it's nice that you guys aren't addicted to TikTok like I am. And yeah, she's got 6 million followers. She launched a podcast called Basically Besties with her daughter, and within 7 months she had 4 million listens. So it really shows the power of Gen Z to grab an audience from social, bring it into podcasting, and be that introduction to podcasting for a lot of Gen Z people. They're fresh out the womb. They've not heard a podcast before, so they're really bringing them into this realm. And that's exciting for the advertisers because Gen Z's obviously been a notorious hard to reach kind of demographic. So you've got them in that podcasting space where they've intentionally clicked on the podcast, they're listening, they're not skipping ads. So it's a really great place to have them. So yeah, looking at the Gen Z kind of charts, they're killing it there. They're bringing those new listens in. And I feel like you guys would probably agree with me. In terms of the media diet of a Gen Z person, podcasting is seen as good. Like when you're scrolling through TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, that's bad. You're wasting your time. When you're like binging Netflix and YouTube, that's mindless. That's bad. If you listen to a podcast, that's smart. That's intellectual. You're like on another level. I'd say podcasting is very much like reading. Like it's that kind of tier of stuff. And you guys obviously speak to that because it's current events. You're educating these people in this medium. So podcasting is cool.
Good one. I like that. Sarah?
I think as well, when you think about it, podcasting is so young. Like, in a lot of ways, it really only took off in recent years. And so I just think it has so much further to go when you compare it to other mediums. Like, it's really at the beginning, I think, right now. And there's so much room for innovation still to come. And I'm excited to see what comes next. And I think there'll be the vodcasting element of it, or how do we engage on platform? How do platforms evolve? Like, there's so much that I'm excited to see because I think we're still so early days with it.
Sam, you ready? It's your time. Round us out.
I think that we have a challenge ahead of us and that we're very focused on how to engage Gen Z in audio, but we need to actually now start thinking about the next generation already. My brother is 19 and him and all his friends do not listen to podcasts. It's not on their radar at all. And so I'm constantly asking him and his friends what they are doing, and it is all Snapchat and TikTok, and they're listening to stuff still, and they put the phone down and put it flat and don't watch it, and they're listening to longer form video, but it's not that engagement with podcasting. So there's some interesting differences. This is what happens in media. It moves so fast that as soon as we feel like we've nailed it, there's a whole nother generation of people to try and solve. So that's going to be fun. The other part of the future that I think is going to be really good is the way that user-generated podcasting and audio content makes its way in. So, I mean, we've got kind of radio style, someone calling in, but we can do better than that with podcasting, and we can actually use our readers' stories to shape our episodes. We can find better ways to streamline how people actually, are they sending us MP3s? Like what's the go with that? How's it being stitched together? How are we listening to our audience in terms of feedback? I think we can do better than just comments on Spotify and Apple. Like, there must be more interesting ways to do that. I was fascinated by the neuroscience of it. I mean, how do I do that? Like, I feel like, can you just order like on Kogan, like some of those headsets, and can I just I'd love to know what our listeners are thinking. So lots of interesting innovation to come. But yes, I can't emphasize enough that we need to start thinking about those nasty teenagers.
I know. I think we have our next year's topic already, though, guys, although we might be too old. I don't know. But thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your input. It's been fantastic to have this conversation with you, get to know you guys. I feel like I know a lot more now. Maybe I should try, like, mum casting instead of mumfluencing. Bad joke. Okay, thank you, everyone.